It's a pity that Justin Trudeau's vacation in Jamaica wasn't a decade, or 2 decades, or 3 decades. So he's back in Canada, giving press conferences and answering questions. Let's hear what he had to say.
Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. Mark Perry from GuelphToday.com. Just to back on the housing topic, of course, a lot of this announcement, it seems like it's more just to eliminate the red tape and a lot of that stuff just maybe at the city hall level. I'm curious about the labor. Do you feel like that's going to be a barrier in achieving the goals that you're looking to achieve with the accelerator fund, and as well as trying to get a lot of these houses toward the targets, of course?
Well, first of all, we recognize there is no one thing that is a magic solution on housing. It takes a multi-layered approach. Even as we're announcing the signing of the Housing Accelerator Fund, we're not doing that in an empty field. We're doing that in a building that federal funding flowed to years ago to be able to create concrete solutions. So it's
not federal funding, your funding. My funding. We are so sick and tired of Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland and other Liberal ministers speaking as if when the federal government gives money to some organization or some startup or some fund, it's starting or coming from the federal government. It doesn't. It comes from Canadian citizens. It's not like the federal government reaches into their own pocketbooks, pulls out a check, and then hands it to someone else. It's they reach into your pocketbook, pull out a check, write what they want on that check, and then give it to someone else, pretending that it's from themselves. It's nonsense.
Yes, it's about announcing and it's about moving forward on simplifying and supporting municipalities as they look to be even more ambitious in what they're doing. But we're going to look at all aspects of the barriers that are slowing down or interfering with the need to meet the growth that Canada and communities like Guelph are facing.
Yes. We can't meet it. We can't. Trudeau talks about a multi-layered approach to solving the housing crisis, and that there are numerous steps and actions that need to be taken to stop the housing crisis, but he refuses to actually take the steps required to stop the housing crisis. He's talking about meeting new demand. We can't meet new demand. It's not possible to meet new demand. It's not possible. So demand has to change, which Trudeau won't do.
Construction workers and availability of labor is a challenge we're facing, which is why we continue to have ambitious immigration targets, why we continue to make sure that we see the growth of Canada as a good thing as we welcome people around the world, but we need to do it in such ways that we are able to get them into the kinds of jobs where things are needed and solving the challenges that we're facing.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next question.
Next question. What kind of funding can the federal government provide for municipalities to help people who are on the streets right now, especially as temperatures drop?
No, again, it's not from the federal government. We can't hammer home this point hard enough. This rhetoric that the federal government provides money needs to stop because it's not true and it's socialist. It enables government to project an image of benevolence and generosity as if all of that money they're giving away comes from themselves. Again, it doesn't. And when we shift the rhetoric and start explaining that when can the federal government steal first or take first from individual Canadians and then give to somebody else to try and help in some particular area, people's eyes will open to the truth. That is, the federal government creates no wealth of its own. All it does is take wealth from people who privately earn it and then redistributes it in order to ensure maximum probability for re-election.
We have invested millions and millions of dollars in fighting homelessness across the country with our Reaching Home program, where we recently doubled and into the billions of dollars our investments in fighting homelessness.
And how well has that worked? How well have Trudeau's policies worked to end homelessness in the country? High inflation, higher taxes, increasing interest rates, housing crisis, etc., etc., etc. All of that's supposed to help homelessness. The federal government's absolute support of legalizing all hard narcotics, that's supposed to give homeless individuals support? Supposed to help them. Really?
Supporting people who are the most vulnerable. But again, like any problem we're facing, there is no one simple way to do it. We've invested about 59 million over the past years through our national housing strategy here in Guelph, and a number of those investments have headed towards initiatives that have helped counter homelessness. We've specifically stepped up with $8 million for Guelph on fighting homelessness. The investments we've facilitated that have led to buildings like this are part of it, but we know there's more to do. But as a government, we are committed to ending chronic homelessness, and we have been acting in that way. And
They aren't. What the government wants is for every individual to be entirely dependent on the most wicked and vile house in Canada, the House of Commons. That's the goal of Trudeau. The goal is to make every single individual entirely dependent on Trudeau, on the federal government for something like housing. Because then think of the power and the control that the government would be able to exercise and leverage over the people of Canada.
Investing in partnership with not just municipalities, but the incredible community organizations that have been on the front lines of not just solving homelessness by putting people in units, but by creating the wraparound services, from health services to counseling to help with job searches, with all the kinds of things that provide solutions to restore dignity to individuals, to see them be able to envisage a future in which they are active determinants of what they want their world to be.
In 2015, you made a campaign promise. It was going to be the last election with first past the post. A lot of people in Guelph here took you at your word.
That was the first mistake. It's foolish to ever take a politician, any politician, at his or her word, particularly Justin Trudeau.
I know there's efforts on Parliament Hill to try and revisit that. Is it time for you to revisit your promise?
I am deeply committed to the idea of electoral reform. I think citizens being able to rank their choices, say my first choice is this party, but my second choice is that party, prevents them from having to vote against the ones they don't want and instead vote for the ones they do. I've long believed in that. In our first mandate, when we had a majority, I would have had the theoretical option of ramming through my preferred option for electoral reform and keeping the letter of that promise. But I also know when it comes to changing our electoral system, it shouldn't be any one party, even with a majority, that gets to decide how all future elections will be unfolded. So out of respect for democracy, I believe we needed to create a consensus around that.
Did he just say, out of respect for democracy, Trudeau? Talking about respect for democracy? That's like a cow talking about cleanliness. He wants to talk about his respect for democracy after what occurred over the last 4 years, after freezing bank accounts, after locking individuals in their homes, after ruthlessly, disgracefully acting against the truckers and the protesters who are exercising their constitutional rights. Trudeau wants to talk about his defense of democracy? What a hypocrite.
Unfortunately, it became clear, despite years of efforts and a lot of work by many different people in the House to try and come to a consensus, there was no clear consensus on how to change our electoral system for the better. And rather than risk Canadian democracy for the sake of ticking off a box in an electoral program, I said we're going to make sure we continue to work on building consensus. As I've said many times, including recently to Jagmeet, if they're willing to come to a consensus around improving our electoral system, I'm happy to revisit it anytime, but it's not something any government should do all alone.
Thank you.
Next question.
Good morning. This is a question for our Bureau. A few days ago, you met with Toronto's top cop, and then protests were banned on Avenue Road. Did you say anything to the police about these protests?
I have had many ongoing conversations with community leaders, with municipal leaders, with police organizations, including the Chief of Police of Montreal before Christmas, on the importance of making sure that all Canadians feel safe in their country, in their communities. The right to protest is an important one in Canada.
No, it's not. No, it isn't. It's not an important right, according to Trudeau. Of course, the right to protest is critical, but not in Trudeau's eyes. The right to protest is, as he says, important. Does he really believe that? Is that before or after he made the truckers, the convoy, the most brilliant protest this country, perhaps the West, has ever seen, disband lest they not be able to pay their bills? Is that the same Trudeau that says the right to protest is important?
Always defend and support. But we also need to be aware that rules and laws need to be enforced. However, the federal
Trudeau is a rule of lawlessness. His idea that rules and laws need to be enforced, or his statement that rules and laws need to be enforced, is a joke. Because again, he is a leader of lawlessness. He doesn't believe in the rule of law. He believes in the rule of Trudeau.
line of command over decisions taken by the Ontario the need to continue to protect all Canadians. To engage with partners right across the country.
Did you specifically express to Toronto's top cop that you would like to see the laws respected and abided by?
My job is to make sure that all Canadians are safe and feel safe across.
We don't need to listen to anymore. It's like, ask about Menzies. Ask about that scandal. Unbelievable. We live in a country of lawlessness because our leader is lawless. He doesn't believe in objective law. He doesn't believe in objective truth. He doesn't believe in objective morals or values, preferring instead to do what's right in his own eyes and exalt himself like God. But the scriptures are clear. Those men who think themselves to be most godly are the ones who are most godless.